Hello, welcome to this week's edition of the podcast for the working girl. Now, this week we're going to be talking about getting over yourself to get ahead. We can also choose to call it getting out of your own way. Now, when it comes to getting ahead, it has been my experience that the first and greatest battle you have to fight is with yourself. You have to burst the myths and get rid of the mindsets that either cause you to play small or to act defensive at all times. Now, two of these things often hinder anyone's career progress. Now, fighting this battle comes to play in a number of ways, and I'm going to take you through 4 suggestions. The first, I'm going to ask that you have a very tough and honest self-assessment of yourself. If you're unable to do this, I'm going to ask that you get a colleague or a close friend who can help you with this self-assessment. You should dispassionately assess yourself, and you should dwell on the outcomes. Just keep a high understanding of yourself. I also believe that it's fair to not to think highly of yourself or think too lowly. My advice is going to be simply that you know your value. I know there's so many things that say know your value, add tax, maybe, but I just think it's important to simply know your value. I'm going to say that you should remember it isn't always about you. Sometimes it's about the organizational objectives. People who gather, at work are the ones, and the people who go further at work are the ones that keep their emotions in check. The ones who remember that whilst you matter, it isn't always about you. And I mean it. I mean to say that the conversation by the water fountain, the side conversations or the giggles at the meetings, it isn't necessarily always about you. So it's important that you're aware of this so you're not defensive at all times. One of the ways to get out of your own way is to learn to collaborate. And it cannot be your way all the time or the highway. I believe it's important to learn to work with people and to learn to work through people. I think this is a really important key to getting out of your own way. Now, invest in developing yourself. I know that we've talked very often about self-development. And I'm just going to say that 2 skills that are must-haves and 2 skills that you should consistently invest in. 1 is the communication skills and 2 is your selling skills. Now, these are the skills to always arm yourselves with because you would constantly need to sell an idea. You would constantly need to sell a product, or you may constantly need to sell yourself. Either way, communication is the underlying thread or the golden thread for success. Learning is constant. Be humble enough to realize it isn't always about the other person. You too need some improvement. You too need some development. And I don't say it because it's easy. I've obviously had my own challenges, with learning to work with people and learning to work through people. But I think it was very important to me to understand the skills very early because they're definitely skills for success at the place of work. Now, it's easy to fall into what I call the pride trap. This is when you are constantly convinced that you are doing everything correctly and at work and that you're always right. This is next to impossible. There's always room to do things better or more effectively. When I was younger, there were many things I was not right. Many times I was not right, yet I believed myself to be. There were other times when I was right, but my methodology wasn't. I often say that you can be sincerely wrong. The problem with the pride trap is that it tells you do not have to do anything but be right. In reality, to get ahead, you not only have to be right, you have to convince other people to see things your way. Sometimes you also have to abandon being right for being considerate. If I dig through, to part of my growing years in the course of my career, I was quite impatient with people earlier, in my career and when I was going through the ranks, if I can call it that. And it would cost me to handle one situation incorrectly or another incorrectly. And I mean, over time, I had to have a tough self-assessment with myself, understand that, I mean, it wasn't always about me. I wasn't always right. And I didn't have all the answers. So, I mean, I realized that things can always be handled in a different way to get a different outcome. So self-reflection should be one of your greatest partners or your greatest step. And I feel like when you have those self-assessment, it will also help you avoid falling into a pity trap. Because I've noticed that young women, tend to mop around once they realize that they haven't been at par with a task, or their ways or their ideas haven't been taken through in a meeting. This took me a lot of learning, and I thought that it was important to share it so people don't take the long road home, as I'd like to call it. But just as importantly, we need to grow our people skills. It's important to know how to get the best out of yourself and the best out of people, because you would constantly be working with people in the course of your career. I'd like to stop here, and I'd like to encourage you to please send your thoughts, leave a review and a comment, and you can send them to inquiry@thelighthousenetwork.org. Have a great rest of the week, and cheers.